Right now, I'm having a conversation with my dear friend, James Carman. I call you a friend, but we're not that close, or what the hell?
Well, it's in process, right?
It's in process. James, he's an incredible artist, a cameraman, editor, filmmaker. I met James back in April. Alan Steinfeld, he was doing an interview with Deepak Chopra. And I said, I volunteer, I want to do some camera work. And we did it at the YouTube studios, right? And I remember that Alan said, Sissy, are you a camera woman? And I said, well, I guess I'm certified at M&N. I can use camera work. I love doing camera work. But I said, how does it work in YouTube? And then when I went in and I saw the guy, remember the Brazilian guy, James? Bringing all that equipment and bringing all the cameras. And I said, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to set this up. So I said to Alan, how are we going to make this work? You have Deepak Chopra as a guest, and I don't even know how to set a tripod. So I said, Sissy, don't worry, don't sweat it, relax, breathe. I have my man, James Carman. He's coming, he's a cinematographer. He's the man in the flesh. So
thank you.
Here we are, James.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
It's good to be here. It's good to have you here with all the knowledge about lighting and camera. You know so much. I want to go back to your background a little bit, but now what we're promoting, what we're talking about is what you're doing.
Right.
Right now in Brooklyn. It's what they call a surreal solo exhibition, right?
Yes.
Can you call it that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's surreal. It's artwork, it's photography, mixed media art, video art. It's called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy.
I think it's a great title.
A remembrance of Hiroshima 70 years on. Yes. And The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, that comes from the Bible, Ecclesiastes 12:5, when it's talking about how all human endeavor is in vain. And then Philip K. Dick, he was a great science fiction writer, and he wrote a book called Man on the High Castle.
I haven't read that book. I have to read it.
And in that book, there's another book that says that in the book, the Man on the High Castle, the Japanese and the Germans won the war, and the United States is occupied.
Right.
And so there's this secret underground book that's being passed hand to hand, and it's illegal, but all of the Americans are reading it because it gives them a little bit of hope. And it's called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy. And in that book, it says that the Axis powers didn't win, the Allies won. And so people enjoy reading that alternative history.
Right. Interesting. I didn't know about that. I have to get that book.
Yeah, it's good.
James.
Yeah.
So how the idea came up? Tell me a little bit about how you decided to bring this on.
Well, I spent a good amount of time in the Philippines when I was young, and it was very much...
You're still young, James. Sorry for the interruption.
No, but this was during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And
how long you were in the Philippines? For how long?
For 4 years.
Okay.
And so I grew up in that war culture, and there's very much kind of a feeling of us and them. The Vietnamese were bad, the Japanese were bad, that kind of feeling. And so I have a sensitivity to this whole way of saying us and them. To say that's the other, they're no good. It's just like if they're from Iraq, they're no good. If they're Arab, they're no good. If they're Islam, they're no good. If they're gay, they're no good.
They're no good,
if they're black or Asian, they're no good.
Right.
And so it's so easy to get caught in those traps of like,
dangerous
it's those guys. And so for me, I wanted to do the show. And I told Katasura Khan, he's a Buto master, and these are Buto-influenced art pieces in photography.
Let's explain what the Buto is, because some people, they don't have idea.
Well, Buto it's a dance form that arose at the end of World War II, in the 50s actually. And, Tokyo had just been firebombed. 100,000 people were killed within 2 weeks in Tokyo. Hiroshima was bombed, and Nagasaki was bombed. 400,000 people were killed in those two bombs. And it wasn't a regular bomb, this was an atomic bomb.
That's correct.
And this is the first and last time that a human population, a civilian population, has been bombed and murdered with one press of a button.
It's incredible. And how they recover in less than less than a century, they were able to become
Yeah.
one of the most powerful countries in the world.
Yes.
I mean, how do you explain that after such a devastating?
Well, there's a couple different things. One is we enabled that, we financed them the way we financed Germany. The initial plan was that Germany would be an agrarian country after World War II. They weren't going to let them do anything except, grow potatoes.
Right.
And then they figured out if they did that, actually communism would become even stronger, and so they needed to build Europe up just as kind of to bolster against communism. And the same thing happened in Japan. They were very concerned about communism and the red tide.
Right, but the mental process of these people too, James, they were able to recover.
Yeah.
And
No, it's
rebuild.
amazing, and they are amazing people. I've always loved the Japanese. I've always loved their aesthetic sense. So basically, the emperor, he was allowed to stay on. That was the only thing that the Japanese insist on, that the emperor allowed to live, and that he allowed to keep his emperorship. And MacArthur said, okay. And so he wanted people to start going back and doing kabuki theater, doing no dance, doing these traditional forms. And some of the artists just didn't want to do it anymore. They'd been nuked, they'd been defeated. Everything old from Japan seemed like a lie, and they
Right,
didn't want to
like a decay,
participate
right?
in
Like
that
it
life.
was-
Japan had been dishonored, so they wanted to do something new. And they didn't have a lot of resources, so they didn't have makeup. So they would just take rice powder and put rice powder all over their body, and that would be their makeup, that would be their costume. They wouldn't even have to wear clothes. A lot of time in Budo, they don't wear clothes. So it is powerful, but it came out of the idea of a revolt, and it's a revolt against, no, we don't want to be part of that war culture. We want to do something different. We want to make something new. And I've always admired that, and I've always related to that. And there's a Buto master, his name is Katasura Kan, and I had the privilege of working with him in 2008, just as the whole stock market crashed. And I did a kind of a business meltdown Budo shoot, and I had them falling over in slow motion on the steps of the courthouse as businessmen were walking by.
Oh, how
And so it's beautiful stuff. And and I told
Where's this guy now?
Khan, he travels
Yes.
all over the world. He's, last time I talked to him, he was in Tibet for 2 months, but he literally travels all over. The thing is Buto is the only art form I wouldn't say it's the only art form. Anime is also very much a Japanese art form, but Buto is international now, and you see Buto everywhere. It's not strictly a Japanese art form anymore, and a lot of people perform it. I mean, for my opening, I had a Buto dance. I just had a J.J. Hertog and Alan Steinfeld speak at an event at the gallery. I had a Buto dance there. I'm showing a film next Wednesday, the 2nd. It's called In My Lifetime. It's about the history of nuclear proliferation. And that's by Robert Fry. It's an award-winning film. He's going to be there. He's going to be talking about it.
It's going to be when? Next week?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
At Point B Gallery. It's
How do we get there? In the subway?
It's
Forget about the cab.
it's Williamsburg. It's Bedford. It's the
Okay,
first stop,
Bedford,
so it's
Brooklyn.
easy. You just get off at Bedford, and then you walk towards the river.
Okay.
3 blocks, and then you're there. It's 71 North 7th Street. 71 North 7th Street, and it starts at 7. And then we're going to also have a Buto dance there. And then
I want to come.
Yeah, of course, you should
wanna
come.
come for
And then
sure.
the closing party, the closing event is going to be on 9/11, so September the 11th, and it's kind of like it started on August 6th, which was when Hiroshima was bombed exactly 70 years ago, and then I'll end on 9/11, and so that kind of encapsulates
Right.
50 years of war.
Why do we fight? Why do we die? What do we go to war for, James? How does it work?
Well,
History, it seems like we don't, do we learn the lessons? Do we know that every country has different, every country has a history and have circumstances, and it's like, it seems like history keeps repeating itself again.
Well, it does. I'm
and
going to have
again.
actually someone speak about that.
Okay.
And the thing is, this has to do with your own internal coherence. The coherence of your field, or depending on how peaceful and loving you are and how compassionate you are. And I think if someone works on that and develops themselves, then you would much rather say hello to someone, talk to them, give them a hug, rather than hit them upside the head and steal their money.
Right.
And if everyone works on becoming more peaceful and loving,
And a
more
better human
compassionate,
being.
then obviously the society is going to become more peaceful, loving, and compassionate, and then you don't really need to make another war. So I think it all comes back down to the individual, and if you work on yourself, and then that influences the people around you. And
But war is a business. It's power,
it is a
it's
business.
money.
It is a business, and it's very true that that's one of the reasons why it perpetuates itself. But it's also, businesses can change, and they do all the time. We used to have a huge steel industry. Now we don't.
Right.
We used to, build a lot of cars. Not so many now. We used to do so many things, and we used to have a lot of different airlines. Now we have Boeing and McDonnell Douglas, and so I think we can just accept that change is inevitable. Change is going to come, so it doesn't have to stay the military-industrial complex. That can shift, and we can develop into something else. We have a lot of energy developing, going to Mars, going to other planets that are like ours.
I was reading an article in Time magazine about a guy they want in the NASA. Obviously, everything is about budget and numbers. In the Congress, they have a lot of pressure. There's a lot of things they got to fix in the country. It's a country that is crumbling, and in my opinion, I mean, even though we're trying to do good, still times are really difficult. And I was reading an article in Time magazine about this. I cannot recall his name, but he's the one who, maybe he's the head behind the exploration to the planet. What's the name of the planet? We call him Pluton.
Pluto.
Pluto, yes, we call him Pluton in Spanish. Yeah. He is the one who's literally basically fighting to get money to go there. It's like
But we will go there. I mean, did you see the photos? The photos are amazing.
I cannot even believe it, but it's like, how do we, I mean, it's inexplicable. I mean, there's barely money to rebuild the economy here. More jobs. I mean, times are tough as they are, James, but we have money to go.
No, but that will make more jobs. That'll make more industry. I mean,
it's going to create a new era. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
like
I mean, it's
described it. What's the name of
the future shock.
The future shock.
Yeah. No, it will create a new industry. I mean, it's like space is like the oceans used to be. We used to have people building ships. We used to have them sailing the ships, carrying cargo. There's all this commerce that happened. The same thing's happening in space now. And
have you seen the movie Inner Space?
No.
Interstellar?
Yes, I saw Interstellar.
What do you think of that film?
I liked
thought
it.
about you when I see it.
No, I liked it. I mean, the thing is that's going to become a very real scenario. I mean, we are going to go to different planets and explore them, and there'll be some tragedies, and sometime in some places we might be able to develop colonies, and it'll mutate, but it's exciting, I think.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
Are we disappearing? Well, I don't think we're going to stick around for that, right? It's going to be ahead, like maybe in 200 years, you think?
No, I think we will stick around. Well, they're going to upload us into a computer, and then when we're ready to go, with the first Mars colony, they'll download us into a cloned body, and then we'll say, okay, we're some of the first Martians. And why not?
Soon enough, James. Yeah. Come on, like everything. Soon enough, you're going to be able to have sex on a computer. Honestly.
Okay, if that's your preference, go ahead.
Well, I mean, anything is possible nowadays. Sometimes I just get in the news and checking between Donald Trump making his allegations. Poor thing. I feel for the guy, man. I really do, because I'm not a Republican. I'm a Democrat, but you gotta keep your mind open.
Of course,
It's about respecting one another, and I think it was very interesting because he's getting slashed by the media for what he did to this guy Ramos, this journalist, his American.
He had him kicked out of his media event. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so rude. But then he was explaining to Fox News. Help me, God. It's not that I'm saying that it's not the most reliable source, but he was explaining in Fox News that, hey, I hire Mexicans. Do you see how many Latinos I have in my staff? Do you know how many Latinos, how many people, how many Spanish, how many Puerto Ricans, how many Mexicans I hired in my businesses? So, I mean, everything has a reason, but we live tough times and difficult. James, you don't know where to trust, who to trust, who's right, who's wrong. Too
Well-
much money out there. It's like wars are taking place, nuclear threats are happening. The Congress is dealing with even stuff that we are not supposed to know, like what they call top secret information. So we're not entitled to have every piece of information.
Well, we should be.
But we should be.
Yes.
We should be. Let's talk about your beginning, because we were talking, you see, I wanted to, literally, we're here to promote your show, but I
Okay.
want to talk about you. How do you know much about lighting? Give me a little bit of your
Because
background.
I'm a cinematographer. I started off as a music composer.
Oh.
And I composed music pieces, and then I started shooting videos and editing the videos to go with the music. And then people started asking me to shoot their films, and then I learned that way. I mean, I had two great teachers. I had one cinematographer. I'd shot a feature film with him, and I just learned as much as I could from him. And then I didn't get one job, and so I had to do another job, and it was lighting a castle. And it was called Sans Souci, which means without worry. And this is in Potsdam, Germany. And it's very hard to light castles because you're
I
not
can
allowed
imagine.
to hang anything, you're not allowed to touch anything.
so what do
and
you
you've got
do?
all these curved surfaces, and there's reflections
stone?
everywhere, and stone, everything.
Right.
Stone, marble, everything. And all these masterpieces. And so there I learned every trick in the book, because it's incredibly hard to light like that. You know, you're not allowed to hang the lights up.
So, based on your opinion, right now, let's give it a quick, from 1 to 10, how do you rate this lighting?
It's good. It's a very general, simple lighting. I think you could also do away with a couple lights if you. They're not all necessary, but it's very simple, and it's very kind of broad, soft lighting. It's good.
So you like the white background? Does it
Yeah.
make sense? Does
Yeah.
does it look a little bit like science fiction? Or
Well,
kinda
it
like, I
makes
like
it more graphic and more abstract, which is good. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm sick and tired of the black background,
Yeah.
So do you like writing then?
I do like to write.
You
yes.
do?
Yeah.
And what about working with actors? I mean, tell me a little bit about your projects. I mean, do you work with actors? Do you like to do more documentaries?
I did do a documentary, if you remember. It's called The Hidden Hand.
You know what? I honestly, I haven't seen it, and I'm not gonna make any lies. Alan says, "Sissy, you need to watch that piece of work. I need to get it."
Yeah. I like everything. I mean, I like documentaries because you learn more about the real world. But
Right.
But if you do narrative shows, it's fun because it's like it's artistically fun. It's kind of like you've got this clay and you can make it however you want. And obviously, it's great to work with actors. I mean, in this photo shoot I did, and also the filming, I worked with one dancer and 4 great actors, and it's beautiful. Because they bring so much more to it, and it becomes so much better than you could have ever made it
But
yourself.
the actors bring a lot to the